Welcome, Michael and Sasha, to Too Long Don't Listen. I'm very happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Very well. Very well, thank you.
Very well.
And you?
We're very warm as well.
Very
because
warm.
It's super hot today. But we made it to the studio and we're going to talk about your career shifts. We're going to talk about Crunch, your amazing company. But before I start asking you a bunch of questions, I'm going to ask you to pick one of these ice-breaking cards.
I volunteer.
Of course you do. And you can pick one side for the question and read it for us.
He looks confused.
What is it?
Basically, you're on a desert island. Which 5 things would you take with you?
Okay.
Right. Complicated one.
This is easy. Huh? You can, okay,
There's
give us 3 things.
There's and I can give you 5. I can give you 15.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just trying to think of the best ones. So there's no electricity on this island, I'm guessing. So
Right,
there's
now
no
you make assumptions.
there's no point to take anything tech.
No,
No point.
they could get generated.
So I would take utensils for cooking.
Okay.
That's to survive. I'll try and take some water. Maybe a cookbook if I feel inspired.
Okay.
Some books, pastime, and a cell phone, hopefully, which does have signal somehow, which probably wouldn't. So that's 5.
Fair enough.
Very practical.
Very practical. You have to read an answer.
Oh, I would love that question. Much easier question.
What would be your death row meal?
You can set the tone for the conversation if you want.
I guess I'd go for Michael's chicken.
Great at promoting the brand. Well done.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
You
Pass
Just
the-
convenient
we
option,
passed
you know.
the test. All right, let's get right into it. Right, so I think the best way to start this conversation is for each of you to give a quick intro of who you are and what you've been up to so far. So we can start with Sasha.
I mean, my past has been much less fruitful than his one, but kind of, in a sense, we met at university, both of us. So basically, as soon as I got first year uni, I did that. Then we started with some friends a startup, which was, well, my first startup. Not a very successful one, but it's where I got to meet basically a good 80% of my network that I use today. So nothing goes to waste. It was a startup which we were organizing kind of high net worth parties and mainly after parties for clients. So we had it lasted only less than a year, but we did receive investment to do these events for people in Mykonos, in Paris. We did in Russia, in Moscow. We did one. Oh, actually, Michael, you were there. You can support.
I love how you kept like crossing paths. during-
Yeah. I remember. There's a photo of him with maybe 18 shots at the event. What else we did? We did one in Switzerland, in my hometown. And then we started expanding into kind of festivals and doing collaborations with the brands. And then disagreement between partners into the direction to which to take it. And generally a bad feeling within, your co-founders, which was the reason why we stopped. So then I really invested all my time into music.
Okay.
And it started really taking off until a point where there was COVID, and that's where I went through hardships, and that's why we had to rethink everything in life, and we got to sit down with Michael, who was going through a similar scenario where he had to figure things out for himself, and now we're here and very happy to be here.
Nice. So, Michael, tell us about your journey.
So it's quite similar in the sense that I've been here in the UK since probably like 14, 15 years old. So initially went to boarding school, then uni, where we met. Initially, actually, I came here for sports, but kind of it died out very quickly. We studied this business something degree, which was not specifically.
You guys really didn't like this degree.
No, not proud.
Not too proud of it, but yeah, I've always had some kind of passion for tech, and I kind of by mid of my journey in my undergrad, I started to work things out where I actually want to be at that point in life. So I was already doing like a few little internships. In between, there was another little startup which was actually coincidentally kind of correlating with hospitality already. So we were developing a little tipping app. So it was like a digital solution to collect tips and restaurants, bars, and etc. And this was kind of my first dive into hospitality, which again, it was quite an interesting experience because we were doing it with pretty well established hospitality group in London. So it's not big, but it's still kind of, like on a local scale. They had like 4 or 5 sites at the time. And yeah, it was interesting from the sense I had quite a lot of responsibilities, probably too much responsibilities for me at that point in time. And I wouldn't say significant, but some budgets to manage as well. We did launch our MVP. We launched across 30, 40 sites in London. And at the point where we actually had the working product, it went to a stage where, there was a split where we actually had to go and invest first and commit to it, or actually go through like a proper raising round. We kind of had to try to develop it in-house with the resources which we had, which were very limited. So the person who was kind of behind the project never committed. So and I didn't really have the courage to take it any further realistically.
Okay.
And yeah.
So where should we start? Who should I start asking questions about
It's your podcast, not mine.
if only we knew what we were going to
Michael or Sasha, who came up with the idea, basically?
Pinterest.
God, no.
Pinterest.
The idea can go huge details of it, but it's you need to have at least 10 minutes for it.
No, just tell us how did it start?
So we wanted to start a food business of some sort, but we were 21 at the time. When we started brainstorming. So the brainstorming was actually very extensive. First, we wanted to go through a big brick and mortar restaurant, which was a cool, for Michael, tech-driven bistro style, where you would have automatic wine dispensers and silver trays, and not to give anyone any ideas, but it was a great idea.
It had a great name as well.
Which
was the name?
Le Plateau, which is the French for the tray.
Just giving it away.
Anyway, if anyone wants to do it, I would be very proud of them. And anyway, so where we got with that is, we never really, now you do it on weekly basis, but we never really did site predictions, and obviously we knew nothing. So obviously trying to go into this with numbers out of your ass, we got to a point where we had the whole thing, we actually did the whole thing, and website and branding.
But just the two of you.
Yeah, everything.
So it was both your ideas.
Yeah. We were living
together. And take us through the ideation to execution steps, because it's always, a lot of us get inspired with ideas all the time, but it's really hard to actually, bring it to life. So how did you guys work out those steps together when you say we figured it out? How was that process for you?
Clearly for this one, it wasn't figured out because we were missing a few steps. But I guess it's as simple as it gets. You have an A4 piece of paper and you're just on top of each other for days with this piece of paper, and you kind of...
Eating sandwiches.
No, this is at much later stage. First you start doing things and you do it in very random order. I think we were doing food costs for these things without knowing anything about the difference between what you see on Google and when you type it, or what you actually get from having some sort of scale with suppliers or things like this. And I don't know.
I think it was a good timing as well, to be honest, because it was all during the COVID, and we were literally stuck in the flat for quite some time, and not even. It's just obviously when you have time to brainstorm, and when you you have a very limited options to go out to do things and etc. You I think we were forced to make our brains work around something, and it was initially it was, we were planning to do rotisserie chickens and stuff. So before it got to sandwiches, it was very
Michael's chicken.
Michael's chicken is the very last stage.
Michael's chicken, yeah.
Then after that, we had another episode of. There was this one which we didn't even try to raise. Once we understood the amount of work, even partly, We were like, okay, that's not for us. Then we went and so we now we understand that we know nothing.
That's a
And
good start.
yeah, so at least
It's true.
step by
we
step.
had zero
Yeah.
experience
Step
in
by step.
hospitality. Nice.
And then we were like, okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna find a consultant to help us. We have great ideas, but we need professional help. He was a top consultant that worked with major supermarkets and things like this. And
I see.
honestly, really nice people and really experienced people who know, well, they're experts in what they do. But for us, we were just two 22-year-olds sitting there, and
Too naive.
yeah, and we were, we were being told that we had to open on like Oxford Street and things like this, like that we'd had to have 3 Brescianau ovens. And to give you an idea, with the volumes Crunch have now, we have one from dating from the 2000s to save costs, and it's just fine. Like it was just everything to the best of the standards, everything with consulting, all the suppliers to the best quality, and
Yeah.
things you absolutely don't need. And we came up with a product which we looked at. And firstly, it was, I think, from top of my head, we were gone about 385,000 that we were told we would
Yeah, it was
need
quite ridiculous.
to open this approximately, without having the location or anything, but just with equipment and average.
Yeah, it
rent.
was just the kitchen setup.
It was, yeah, it was something, yeah.
out of this earth.
So-
What was your reaction when they told you this?
Sad.
So we were sad, and at the same time we were like, is this that? Is it like impossible?
Yeah.
And we got home, and I remember that was the only time, I think, over the 1 year where we actually had like 1 or 2 days of like pause to just think.
Mm.
And then we took it, and we're like, okay, it's not sandwiches, which is the problem, because that project was already sandwiches. It was Croque Monsieur, so it was same brand. Actually, we already invested into the brand. Michael found here.
Yeah, the actual name of the brand actually refers to like now, like if you go for our sandwiches, there is, well, many people like complain that there's no actual crunch, but like
It was for a different.
the problem
process.
is the name came before the actual, like this sandwiches actually were developed, so it was
Got
for
it.
this kind of the
Okay.
Croque Monsieurs, because they have like this crunchy kind of layer.
Oh, we're getting answers here. Like I never, dared to ask why crunch, why that.
Yeah, I mean that was
So-
now you know.
Okay.
And then we got to a point to finish that, okay, well, if we are to start something, clearly no one trusts us, which is completely understandable. No one trusts us. No one is really going to do it for you without taking exorbitant fees, which we just didn't have. So we decided to try and figure something out with what we already had. So we figured out sandwiches wasn't the problem for us, because clearly like people eat sandwiches.
Like you found your niche, you were confident about.
Yeah,
that.
but it's not about that. You could have done it with pasta, you could have done it with whatever, but like
Right.
clearly the product itself wasn't the problem. The problem was we figured out that it was the looks, because already we were, even before starting, even like ironically, we didn't even know about food influencers and kind of things to market the product. But we were just thinking, okay, like, what would work on, if you take a picture of it, what would look appetizing, what would look good on the media, and that's kind of, I think, thank God, the realization, which helped us quite a bit, because then we learned some different mistakes from different mistakes along the way, much later down the line. It's nothing to do with crunch, but when we really sat down, we're like, okay, let's keep it as it is. Let's alter the recipes slightly, and again, we were doing it all together, and those recipes. We were like, okay, let's find a bread or an idea of a bread that will make this thing stand out. And then once we found that, it took some time. We did probably every single bakery that exists in London. We were getting samples to our flat where we used to live together. And every time the bakers would come at 6 a.m, they were like, what the hell is this restaurant? So we would get the samples, and we tried every single one until we found like, wow, like something like this would look good. And then the rest was simple. The idea was to start with the minimum possible humanly imaginable investment.
Right.
And that's how it went. We then went into a pub. Well, you've been there.
I've been there a few times. Early days.
We found this startup which also emerged during COVID, which used to rent unused spaces to operators. And we found this pub on Old Street hidden away. Which was, well, extremely cheap. And we decided to test it from there. And the rest is, well, That was,
The rest is
thank God.
And the rest
is-
is, yeah, what we're also going to talk about because it's so interesting. So you guys basically kind of reversed engineered the whole thing because you were thinking, what do we want the final product to look like on almost like on social, or we want it to look good. And that was already your strategy. Like you knew that marketing would be the main driver for this concept, right?
No.
I
Not at
wouldn't
all?
say so.
No.
I think we were kind of narrowing it down from the perspective of actually, well, we're trying to do something what's actually feasible as well for us
Okay.
to start with some sort of sensible risks, because again, like we didn't had like astronomical budgets to just, fully dive into it. So we were looking at something what has, well, a good kind of risk return ratio.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think there's one little step like before we actually started evaluating this whole idea of like breads and kind of how like what we were looking for specifically. There is this like the shift from the croque monsieurs, and I don't know, he keeps forgetting this part, but the shift from croque monsieur to the sandwiches, how they look, well, not how they look today, but to the format which they're in today.
Yeah.
There's just one Pinterest image which kind of changed everything.
Oh, yeah, true, yes.
There is just this one Pinterest image of this mystery
yeah.
sandwich,
Yeah,
which
that's
just
true. Which is Michael's chicken.
which is Michael's chicken.
And it used to be a Google banner advert.
It used to
for,
be.
like, the first year.
I think it's probably like
Yeah.
second or third pick in our
So that
Instagram.
inspired the whole like
Yeah, true, to
concept.
be honest.
And we
Okay.
tried to locate where it was, but like we
We
just
never
managed. But this was like the wow. This was
Okay, so you mentioned now that let's say we're in this pub, right? We're in the early days of Crunch. How was the traction for you guys? Like, how did you tell us more about the
Oh, it was dead.
no, because you obviously introduced like this new concept to the market, and you mentioned it's a hidden pub in Old Street. So how did you manage to drive attention to your product, and how were the early signs of growth, basically?
Like Crunch was very hype and very, very hype. So, first signs of growth of this delivery growth in November, which allowed us to start surviving and pay the first salary. And that was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. We're not going to be working in the kitchen 24/7, like 8 in the morning till 12 and to the rest of our
Yeah.
lives. So that's the first sign. But the main growth was in January when we discovered the power of just an influencer coming. And shout out to her, Eat Snack Repeat on Instagram. She turned around the whole thing.
So that's how
In
you
one
started,
day.
like.
Yeah, no, over day our growth went, good 800% overnight. And it was quite impressive. We had queues for like 2-3 weeks. Delivery went up by ×4 at least, straight away overnight. And we thought it would be 2 weeks, 3 weeks until it dies out. Well, thank
It's still
God.
going today.
Now it's different store, different thing. We don't have that pub sadly anymore.
Right.
But it never really stopped. And we had the same kind of hype when we opened the Spitalfields location. And it really never went down. The sales kept growing. And it's just like, yeah, okay, you will have the trend seekers who come for a bit, but that kind of general demand for the product is more of a over kind of that people actually appreciate what's inside, which that
what
was
do
the
you
main
think-
plan.
What do you think makes it so special? Like, there's so many other sandwich platforms out there. I'm trying to trigger you guys.
I'm not actually going to let him answer because then we're going to go into a legal battle with our fellow.
there's quite a few brands.
Let's name them. Let's
no,
do it.
let's not name them.
Okay.
But just to answer your question, there is not actually that much which is similar because it's mainly about the look that is interesting. Because a sandwich, in theory, not to educate you about the legal requirements to open a restaurant, but to make a sandwich, you only need is like a normal retail store, like most of them. And I'm not saying they're bad. It's just I'm saying it's a very different. We're probably more interestingly close competition to burger brands than to sandwiches. It's just that we look like a sandwich.
I see.
At the end of the
Okay.
day, we're frying chicken, we're making burgers, we
Essentially we're a hybrid of both,
Yeah.
realistically.
And you
So
think that's what makes it so special?
plus the look of it.
it makes it, it makes it different, definitely.
Makes it different yet relatable as well, to a certain extent. People know what they're getting into when they're buying it.
And I think it makes it more kind of universal, because if you look at most of the sandwich brands out there, like purely like classic sandwich brands as we know them, well, their offering is more kind of lunch focused, whereas we kind of we're aiming to be an all day offering. So like, I'm not going to name, but let's say brand X sandwich, you can easily go and have it for lunch, but you would probably not typically have it for dinner. When as Crunch, it's quite universal in its nature. Like it's like having a burger in the evening, but yet at lunch, well, you can perceive it as a sandwich. So it's kind of,
Okay.
there is a bit of this mental kind of perception of it being not like perceived as a typical cold sandwich, which, you know, you
So-
get from Pret or somewhere.
In terms of like your positioning in the burger market, like do you think you're creating your own like sandwich category, or are you following the current trends and kind of differentiating with the looks only? Because I do think there's more that you're offering in terms of like the ingredients and the story behind like the sandwich in itself, if we can call it that. Like give me something else. I'm sure you guys have given more thought to your differentiation points.
I mean, for me, it's enough.
Okay.
For me, generally, it's enough. We're trying to really not reinvent the wheels because, I'm sorry, in my personal opinion, when I go to a place and it's all very cool, you know, like yuzu lemon zest and this and that and that.
Yeah.
I want a proper chicken sandwich. I want a proper steak sandwich.
Yeah.
I want something which is actually, and I'm not saying we're the best in the world. I'm just saying we actually offer you a product which is very good quality bread, which, and again, as a comparison, compared to a burger bun, what we, even though it's made by us, the actual cost of this bread is like times 2 of what you get like as a burger bun in any burger place, or a white, you know, loaf of a sandwich, which most kind of sandwich brands have, or like a,
Yeah.
you know, it's not white bread. There's brioche, there's butter, there's I'm not going to say the rest of the ingredients, but there's quite a few ingredients which actually cost money. So firstly, whichever angle you come on, you're actually having 9 times out of 10, if not 10, a better quality bread, which is buttery, which we even butter again with clarified butter.
Okay.
So you actually get something which is properly gourmet in terms of bread. And in between, that's one of the selling points for me. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We might not be getting awards for the most innovative sandwich on earth, even though we do have one position on the menu where, especially driven by Michael, we were trying to interchange as much as possible and make specials, but we then discovered it's not as easy. Now we got back into it, and now we're really changing once a month.
Why is it not so easy?
There is a lot of like, there is a food costing, there is sourcing of the ingredients, making sure that we can scale like each sub recipe, and just making sure that, you know, we can actually make. Yeah, I think the consistency of the taste is one thing which is normally like, you know, the hardest bit, because at the end of the day, which makes us quite different to most of the brands out there, is like we still have to cook each sandwich. So it's not like pre-made standardized stuff. So there is still a human error, which we need to minimize as much as we can. So like, you know, if you have, I don't know, let's say steak sandwich, well, if someone overcooks your steak, which is
or someone cuts against the grain.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like technical bits which can go wrong. So we're doing the tastings, you know, Johnny making us a sandwich to trial like during one of our RD sessions, and it tastes exceptional, and like you're all excited and etc. But then when you're actually trying to kind of scale it up and make sure that the rest of your team can execute it, especially during the rush hours, this is where you can start actually see the bottlenecks occurring, and it's all, you know, not working out as you initially planned.
I'm happy you brought this up, because it's a perfect transition to ask you guys about customer reactions. And like you mentioned initially, you like the first days of marketing that you were so caring about like each package and stuff. Do you think you've built a loyal customer base in the beginning that's still around today, or do you think your customers are mostly like new to the brand and, you know, they are curious but then they don't come back? So I'm trying to understand your audience a bit more, if you have any also stories to tell us about maybe unhappy customers.
Well,
and how you deal
plenty. I tend to deal with them, which is the nicest, really nice experience, to be honest.
Okay.
You get to hear to which length people go to either complain, and also in a nicer way, to which length people actually sometimes go to help your business.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing better than feedback to actually build on.
I mean,
anything
especially when
else.
it's constructive.
We made sure, because we do start now delegating a little bit of monotonous work, let's put it this way. But reviews is one thing. Any reviews, any info, question, emails, all of this that's going to us. We would, and I think, I mean, personally, I will never let the info email go to anyone else. It's the most important thing to keep track, I think. And you would get now, especially at the beginning, it wasn't interesting. It would be nice to receive once in a while a nice comment on that, but the negative feedback, you'd mostly having people just shitting on the brand and things like this. Like,
On the
just
brand
because-
or the product?
on the product, because they had the sandwich delivered cold from Deliveroo, which is absolutely
your
out of our
fault.
control.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time. But now you actually get a lot of it. We get, I mean, easily 10, 15 emails a day, which just actually give you feedback. Some of them happy, some of them unhappy. And that's just over email. Then you have the Deliveroo one, which is like raining most of the days as well. Because,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you guys are, just in terms of distribution, you have the Spetafield market, but and you're also on Deliveroo.
Or sales channels?
Yes. So
I
basically,
mean, we have loads of small ones, which we're cutting.
yeah, because I was
finally.
gonna ask you about, like, obviously the scalability of the entire
we have
project.
we have on one site, which is 8 square meters, so we're selling in house, so like that's your consumers.
Right.
Then we're selling on Deliveroo, we're selling on Uber Eats. Now we actually signed up on Just Eat because we have this thing which integrates all of our deliveries. We even on Hungry Panda for the sake of it. We did 3 orders, I think, on this platform. Not working great for us, but we still on it because why not? Then we have some catering partners, 2 of them. And now we have our own ordering as well, which people can order from the website. But now, I mean, we have this massive QR code light box, which looks cool, and people can just scan it. And it says skip the queue. So actually quite a few people scan it because people like skipping the queue. And then, then the staff get the order without having to take the order, and it helps. So that's about the channels.
Okay, and now on to the juicy part. As you know, I love marketing, so I'm going to ask you some stuff about that because I'm curious about, well, first, I think a first good question would be your team. So currently, you mentioned the core team is 3 people, right?
Yeah.
And then you have,
Depends what you mean by core team.
like, the decision makers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how big is your team currently, like, in terms of people helping out? And
Between 28 and 32 people.
Okay, and your growth strategy is mostly through social media, or maybe you can tell us more about that.
I think it's the best example now. Now, I think in terms of like proper marketing activation, when you kind of spike moments, apart from, last month we had the post from an influencer with over, I think 1.1 million plus his TikTok. I mean, something mad. And it didn't generate a huge spike, but we did see quite a significant increase in sales. But before that, I think for a good 6 months, it was just in-house.
I mean, we're trying, because I mean, realistically, we, like, as you said, like, I mean, there's this core team of, let's say, 3 people, but like realistically, marketing is it's me and Sasha mainly like dealing with this, and we have quite a lot of ideas and stuff just parked there waiting to be activated, but I think it's a lack of time because
the lack of camera.
It sounds like it's not your priority.
It's not that we understand the importance of it, and we actually like, I'd love this to be like, my priority on daily basis, but then but then the reality is, with this industry we've learned a lot, and like at least like 20-25% of your day on daily basis is purely just dedicated to HR, for example, which again, when you have an HR person in the company dealing with this, it's one thing, but when it's just us two, well, it is quite time consuming. But coming back to marketing, I think we now starting to kind of get back in it as we should, and we hopefully by September due to actually to relaunch it in a kind of in a state in which we actually want to see it. So like I think we're doing a great job in terms of like brand presence and like consistency of a brand.
Yeah.
Like if you look at what we do, like in this occasional kind of campaigns which we do, like for example we did this I think really cool activation for the National Sandwich Day in November, and we had like we do we do quite a bit of campaigns around like the specials which we launch and etc. So I think all of this is good, and all of this is quite organic. So we never actually paid for any of this to be like pushed. So okay, there's nothing what went above 30 40k views, but still you're getting some good retention. You have a good quality of content, and what's important here is we always like whoever we're speaking to now, whether like some food suppliers, whether we're going for site viewings, like people within people within the industry see it, and people actually tick the boxes. Like it's
I love what you guys are doing. Like I'm so impressed.
Did you check how often these posts?
It's not very frequent.
Exactly.
Not frequent at all.
But do you care?
It's done well. So it's quality versus quantity.
So and I think it's also like I think what's important for us is who we're targeting. Like we can see that clearly the people who we need to see it, they do see it. So okay, we'd love to at some point obviously to spread this audience and to kind of to capture the bigger masses, but what's important is that people in the industry and the people who we kind of really need to make sure that see the brand out there, they're already kind of we are on the right radars.
Like are you mixing some of your skills from your previous lives before Crunch to your day-to-day with Crunch, and do you miss any of that, like the pre-Crunch life?
I mean, as a personal life question, like for me, it's actually quite interesting. I can't see you, so speaking to you across.
It's been an hour. Like the last question, I can't see you.
I mean, I could. I'm always looking. I'm always looking against in the middle of this thing. But no, it's quite an interesting question. Do I use it on day to day? Well, actually, music. Well, no. I did do the playlist initially for the.
There you go.
But it didn't go well. The team did not accept it.
The team really did not accept it, and I was hated by.
It was a bit too hardcore.
Was it too fast paced? Like
repetitive, apparently. Well, anyway,
you don't have creativity, guys.
But on a much larger scale of things, 80% of people I call when I need something major,
network.
I'm reaching from people I've met through what I was doing previously. So as much as network, everyone's talking about network. I don't believe at the point where you in a project and you need to figure it out, you will figure it out. But it's true that you can always, when you're well surrounded, you can always get help. We get help for all sorts of stuff, for when we're raising, for when we this, and we always have someone who you met out, I don't know, somewhere who works in private equity who can model your business in 2 minutes for you.
That's
and you can learn from that. So actually, as an entrepreneur, I think the most important thing is that you're going to be learning every day, like regardless. Now you have ChatGPT and thing you can ask things for, as much as not that accurate most of the time, I find, but it's still like in terms of to learn, you have Google, you have so much resources today to just like do a few clicks and understand in depth a topic which you never heard about. And it's very useful. I think that's the main thing again from my past.
But it sounds like Crunch was a good thing for you.
100%.
To also give you that perspective.
And
what about you, Michael? Because you come from also like the heavy tech background, and you're of course amazing business degree that you love so much. But how is that incorporated in your day to day?
I don't think it's. I mean, at the start, I think I was kind of almost like a bit traumatized, and I think I was kind of trying to perceive things in hospitality from the perspective as if I'm still working in tech, and you were expecting people around you to work kind of in the same in this kind of sprint mindset where you have I remember at the start I was trying to teach him how to use a Trello board or something, like we were having like different Slack channels, I was trying to at the start to take all the best practices which I thought could be applicable in the industry, but this didn't go far. So
he ended up with Sharpie and board.
Unfortunately, it all comes down to Sharpie.
Too,
but I think it's more just like on a personal level. I think there's a lot of in terms of how I organize my work streams, it kind of helps me a lot. Again, there is still quite a lot of tech-ish related questions around what we do. And, even Crunch as it is today, like we do have, there is a big vision for it. And I do hope that further down the line, we can kind of become a bit more than just, kind of a sandwich or food brand. There is some things happening in the background related to computer vision now, which again might or might not come alive within foreseen future. But we're always trying out things, and in a sense, I feel like Crunch is because I always liked this kind of intersect of hospitality and tech. And well, I was doing a project literally in this field before Crunch, so I do think that there is a lot of room for something to be, born one day out of it, more kind of tech leaning. And also it does give me a playground. There is like the amount of stuff we tried out in, I don't know, this year and a half, just integrating different things and just, actually having a freedom to play around with it as you want. It does give me a bit of joy and kind of a reminder of where I've started.
And my last question to both of you would be if you can share any, maybe, any tip or anything that's helpful, something you've read, something you've seen, something that helped you kind of through your entrepreneurial journey. It could even be a song that helps you go through it.
A song? Oh, God.
You decide.
No, just there's not much. The only thing we can do is probably through our mistakes. And through, somewhat for what it's worth, our advice. But I think just in general, when you're about to start something like this, just like him, he thought he was still in tech. You are naive at some point. Like there's some minds who are just prone to risk, and so I absolutely didn't mind the work, and that's the thing which stops most people from starting something. Like you must be ready that like everyone tells you, oh, you're gonna start this and you're just gonna have no life. Well, that's completely true, and I'm pretty sure it's for every business. It's not just for hospitality. It's known to be quite a physically like tough one and mentally tough one. But I'm sure it's the same for every single business, and you need to be ready for that. That doesn't scare you, then great.
I think this is the thing. Like, you need to know like what gives you the pleasure about like why you're doing it. Like, there needs to be some sort of a driver for you to kind of wake up every morning. Like, if you can answer yourself why you're doing it, what excites you about it, where you're kind of trying to take it. I think that's the kind of key, because if you cannot answer these questions, then you probably need to answer whether it's the right thing for you or not, because you will be burning out, you will be doing long hours, you will be having, I don't know, like panic attacks, whatever. Everyone has their own ways of handling stress and going through, starting, like, at the start, it's always hard. But yeah, as long as you know kind of that there is actually still some pleasure to gain for you from this, and you actually enjoy it, I think that's kind of a good base.
Purpose. You have your purpose and you're on a mission, and I'm very happy that you shared your story with me. I hope I didn't ask you too many questions.
No,
it was the
just
whole
enough.
point,
we might look secretive, but we're very much open book.
Yeah, you guys were great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us. First one ever.